In an upscale cafe bustling with afternoon patrons, a respected black woman stood dripping with soda, her dignity under assault but not destroyed. The cruel act, deliberate, public, and unmistakably racist, was captured on dozens of cell phones. What nobody knew: her husband wasn't just any man. He was a silent force, a CEO with billions at his command, and the determination to use every resource to deliver justice. This isn't just another story about discrimination. This is about power revealed only when necessary, about consequences that reshape entire industries, and about what happens when those who believe they can humiliate others with impunity discover they've made a catastrophic miscalculation. Every day across America, racism disguises itself as customer service mishaps, as unfortunate misunderstandings, as isolated incidents. It hides behind corporate policies and management indifference. But occasionally, gloriously, the tables turn in ways nobody could anticipate. Have you ever witnessed someone being mistreated because of their race? That moment when your stomach tightens and you wonder, should I speak up? Should I record this? What if that were my family member? What if it were me? Or perhaps you've experienced it yourself, that hollow feeling when you realize someone sees only your skin color, not your humanity. The burning shame, not from anything you've done, but from being reduced to a stereotype in public. Today's story explores what happens when racism meets its match, when hidden power emerges from the shadows and demands accountability at every level. If you've ever witnessed or experienced discrimination, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in this conversation about justice, dignity, and the power of consequences. Latasha Brooks stepped into the Grand Cafe and Bistro with purposeful confidence, her portfolio tucked under one arm. At 42, she had earned her reputation as one of Riverwood's most effective community organizers. Through her nonprofit Equal Grounds, she had secured housing for displaced families, established mentorship programs for at-risk youth, and successfully lobbied for equitable development policies that protected historically black neighborhoods from predatory gentrification. The Grand Cafe wasn't just any dining establishment. Located at the intersection of Riverwood's financial district and its historically black community, the cafe represented the city's supposed progress, a gathering place where executives and community members could theoretically meet as equals. Its exposed brick walls, modern art installations, and fair trade coffee credentials made it a frequent backdrop for local news segments about urban renewal. Today's meeting carried particular weight. Latasha had arranged to meet with executives from 5 major corporations, each with significant influence over the city's economic landscape. Her agenda: persuading them to implement substantive internship programs targeting underrepresented youth from Riverwood's most economically challenged neighborhoods. "Ms. Brooks, your guests are already seated in the private dining section," said the host, a young man whose smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Latasha nodded, smoothing her charcoal blazer and straightening her silver necklace, a gift from her husband on their 10th anniversary. What the maître didn't know, what few people knew, was that her husband Darius controlled more capital than all 5 of her meeting partners combined. They kept their relationship purposefully low profile, allowing Latasha's work to stand on its own merits rather than benefit from his financial influence. As she walked through the main dining area, Latasha noticed several staff members exchanging glances. A new employee behind the beverage counter stared at her with unmistakable contempt, whispering something to his colleague that made them both smirk. The air in the cafe seemed to thicken. A tension ran through the space that Latasha recognized instantly, the weight of being watched, judged, resented. She had navigated these currents her entire professional life, but something about this particular moment felt different. The meeting ahead would be challenging, but the real threat, unknown to her, waited just a few steps away at the beverage station. Trevor Manning had worked at the Grand Cafe for only 3 weeks, but his attitude had already raised concerns among some staff. As Latasha approached the beverage station en route to her meeting, Trevor's eyes narrowed. He reached for a freshly stocked can of Pepsi, popped the tab with deliberate slowness, and waited. "Excuse me," Latasha said politely, attempting to navigate past him in the narrow corridor. Trevor stepped directly into her path, his 6-foot frame blocking her way. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. Before Latasha could respond, Trevor tilted the can. The dark liquid arced through the air, splashing across her cream-colored blouse, charcoal blazer, and carefully styled hair. The cold soda drenched her portfolio, destroying weeks of meticulously prepared presentation materials. "Oops," Trevor said, his mouth curling into a satisfied smile. "Guess I'm just clumsy." The cafe fell silent. A woman at a nearby table gasped. A business executive halfway through his lunch lowered his fork. The barista behind the counter froze mid-pour. "What are you doing?" demanded another staff member, rushing forward with napkins. Trevor shrugged. "Accidents happen," he said, making no move to help clean up. Phones emerged from pockets and purses. At least 7 patrons began recording the aftermath, their cameras capturing Latasha standing perfectly still, soda dripping from her clothes, her expression a masterclass in controlled emotion. The cafe manager hurried over, his face flushed. "Miss Brooks, I am so—" Latasha raised one hand, stopping his apology mid-sentence. "Please step back," she said, her voice steady. She reached for a napkin, dabbed at her blouse, and took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice carried throughout the now silent cafe. "I came here today to discuss creating opportunities for young people in our community, to show them that dignity and respect can exist in professional spaces." She looked directly at Trevor. "What you just did wasn't about me, it was about you, and everyone here witnessed it." Trevor's smirk faltered as phones continued recording. A businesswoman approached Latasha with her business card. "I'm an attorney," she whispered. "That was assault. I saw everything." 2 security guards from the building complex arrived, summoned by concerned staff. The manager, now visibly panicking, turned to Trevor. "You're fired. Get out now." As Trevor was escorted from the premises, Latasha stood tall, her dignity intact despite her ruined clothes and presentation materials. She addressed the 5 executives who had emerged from the private dining area. "Gentlemen, our meeting will need to be rescheduled. I believe we now have even more to discuss. Would you have maintained such composure in the face of such a deliberate and public assault on your dignity? Or would rage, tears, or retaliation have won the moment?" By evening, the video of Latasha's humiliation had spread across social media platforms. A 15-second clip showing the moment the Pepsi splashed across her professional attire reached 2 million views within 3 hours. Hashtags emerged, "Justice for Latasha," and "Boycott Grand Cafe" dominated trending topics nationwide. Community leaders in Riverwood called for immediate action. Reverend James Wilson of First Community Church announced a planned protest outside the cafe. "What happened to Latasha Brooks represents the daily indignities Black Americans face," he told local news. "This time, there's video evidence no one can deny." The Equal Grounds office received hundreds of messages of support. Former clients and community members organized a professional clothing drive for Latasha, though the gesture was about far more than replacing a ruined outfit. It was about restoring dignity that someone had tried to strip away. Corporate response came swiftly, but fell woefully short. The Grand Cafe's parent company, Lux Dining Enterprises, issued a statement that inflamed rather than calmed the situation. "We regret the unfortunate incident that occurred today. The employee in question has been terminated. We consider this matter resolved and reaffirm our commitment to serving all customers with respect." No mention of racial motivation, no acknowledgement of Latasha by name, no offer of restitution for her damaged property and presentation materials. The statement's clinical tone and dismissive finality only intensified public outrage. "They think firing one employee solves institutional problems," commented Dr. Regina Harris, professor of sociology at Riverwood University. This response demonstrates exactly why discrimination persists, because businesses treat symptoms while ignoring the disease. By midnight, celebrities and influencers had amplified the story. The cafe's online ratings plummeted. Reservations were canceled en masse, but Lux Dining's executives remained silent, apparently hoping the controversy would simply fade away. They had no idea what was coming next. If you believe businesses should be held accountable for discrimination, subscribe to Black Narratives for more stories of justice. This channel documents not just the problems, but the powerful responses that create lasting change. As the viral video reached millions, it also appeared on the secure phone of Darius Hawthorne during a board meeting on the 47th floor of Hawthorne Tower. The 45-year-old CEO froze mid-presentation, his composed expression giving way to momentary shock before hardening into resolve. "We'll continue this tomorrow," he announced to his confused executives. No explanation, no apology, just the quiet authority of a man who had built a $4.8 billion technology empire from nothing. Darius Hawthorne wasn't just any CEO. As founder and chief architect of Hawthorne Innovations, he had revolutionized sustainable energy technology, created AI systems that enhanced accessibility for disabled users, and launched investment funds specifically targeting minority entrepreneurs. Forbes had named him among the most influential business leaders 3 years running, though he routinely declined profile interviews and avoided public appearances. What the business world didn't know, Darius had deliberately kept his marriage to Latasha private for 15 years. Not out of shame, but strategic purpose. "Your work stands on its own merit," he had told Latasha early in their relationship. "If people know you're married to me, they'll either dismiss your accomplishments or only help you to gain my favor." Their arrangement worked perfectly. While Latasha built Equal Grounds into a powerful advocacy organization, Darius supported her mission through anonymous donations and behind-the-scenes connections. He attended her community events as Latasha's husband, not as a billionaire CEO. In their neighborhood, they were simply Darius and Latasha, a couple known for hosting barbecues and mentoring local kids. Now, watching his wife dripping with soda while maintaining her dignity amidst blatant racism, Darius felt a complex storm of emotions: pride in her composure, rage at her humiliation, and a cold, calculated fury toward the establishment that allowed it to happen. "Get me everything on Lux Dining Enterprises," he instructed his assistant as he closed his office door. "Ownership structure, investment portfolio, supply chain dependencies, board members, everything." Darius had built his career by solving complex problems. He approached business challenges with surgical precision, identifying pressure points and applying leverage exactly where needed. Now, he would direct that same methodical approach toward justice for his wife and accountability for an entire corporate structure. "They think this is about one employee," he said to his reflection in the darkened window overlooking the city. "They have no idea what's coming." For the first time in his career, Darius was about to merge his private principles with his public power. The question wasn't whether he would respond, but how completely he would transform the landscape in the process. By dawn the following day, Darius had transformed the 38th floor of Hawthorne Tower into a command center. His chief legal counsel, Amara Washington, arrived to find 3 conference rooms already buzzing with activity. "We move on 3 fronts," Darius explained, guiding her through his strategy. "Legal, financial, and public sentiment, coordinated but distinct." Within hours, Hawthorne's elite legal team filed formal complaints with the State Human Rights Commission, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. The filings didn't just target Trevor's actions, but methodically detailed management's inadequate response and the company's history of similar incidents. "We've identified 7 previous complaints against Lux Dining properties in the past 3 years," reported Marcus Chen, Hawthorne's head of investigation. "All involved customers of color. All were settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements." Darius nodded. "Find those customers. Make them offers to release them from their NDAs. Double whatever they were paid for their silence." While the legal team built their case, Darius worked his network with precision. He didn't issue public statements or threaten boycotts. Instead, he made private calls to 12 key figures, people whose decisions shaped Riverwood's economic landscape. To Mayor Patricia Hernandez, "I've been considering locations for our new tech campus. Recent events make me question Riverwood's commitment to dignity in public accommodations." To James Winters, CEO of Riverwood First National Bank, which held millions in Lux Dining loans, "As a major depositor, I'm concerned about your risk exposure to businesses with discriminatory practices." To Catherine Liu, chair of the Downtown Business Alliance, "The association's silence on this incident communicates troubling values to potential corporate partners." Each conversation ended with the same question: what specific actions will you take to address this situation? Meanwhile, Darius's PR strategists worked a subtle campaign, providing background information to journalists investigating Lux Dining's corporate culture. They didn't plant stories, they simply ensured reporters had access to public records, former employee testimonials, and pattern evidence. Our goal isn't revenge, Darius told his team, it's reformation. Not just of one cafe, but of how businesses respond to discrimination. By day 3, the investigation had uncovered a more extensive pattern than initially suspected. The parent company had systematically buried complaints across their 32 locations nationwide. Internal memos revealed management training that emphasized handling discrimination claims rather than preventing discrimination itself. When Lux Dining's CEO Calvin Reynolds finally called Darius, after pressure from the company's increasingly nervous board, Darius was prepared. Mr. Reynolds, this isn't about negotiating a settlement, Darius stated calmly. This is about structural change. I've prepared a comprehensive accountability framework for your review. The document outlined mandatory bias training, leadership diversity goals, transparent complaint procedures, community advisory boards, and financial commitments to racial justice organizations. Implement these changes and I'll consider the matter resolved, Darius concluded. Refuse, and tomorrow morning, every investor, supplier, and customer will receive detailed documentation of your company's history. The choice is yours. While public protesters marched outside Grand Cafe locations nationwide, Darius's quiet influence reshaped the company from within. No grandstanding press conferences, no public threats, just the methodical application of power where it mattered most. Within 2 weeks, Lux Dining Enterprises announced a complete organizational restructuring at a hastily arranged press conference. CEO Calvin Reynolds, visibly uncomfortable before the assembled media, read from a prepared statement. We acknowledge our failure to create a safe, respectful environment for all customers. The incident involving Ms. Latasha Brooks revealed profound shortcomings in our company culture that we are now addressing with immediate and far-reaching changes. The changes were indeed sweeping. Beyond firing Trevor, the company terminated the cafe manager, district supervisor, and 2 corporate executives responsible for dismissing previous discrimination complaints. The company's head of human resources and chief operating officer both resigned to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for forced departures. But accountability extended far beyond personnel changes. The company published a comprehensive anti-discrimination framework developed with civil rights organizations. The new policies included mandatory quarterly training for all staff on implicit bias and cultural competence, anonymous reporting systems for customers and employees, financial penalties for managers under whose watch discrimination occurred, recruitment partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities, a newly established Diversity and Inclusion Council with actual decision-making power. Most significantly, Lux Dining committed 5% of annual profits to organizations combating racial inequality, a financial commitment exceeding $3.7 million the first year alone. The ripple effects spread throughout the hospitality industry. Within months, the National Restaurant Association announced enhanced anti-discrimination standards for member businesses. 3 state legislatures introduced bills strengthening penalties for public accommodation discrimination. Corporate training companies reported a 340% increase in requests for anti-bias programming. As one industry analyst noted, the Grand Cafe incident became a watershed moment because the response went beyond the usual superficial apologies. It demonstrated that meaningful accountability hits businesses where they feel it most: their leadership structure and their bottom line. For other businesses watching from the sidelines, the message was clear. Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was financially devastating. Have you seen businesses change after being held accountable? Share your experiences below about companies that transformed their practices after public pressure or those that failed to address discrimination properly. Throughout the corporate fallout, Latasha Brooks transformed personal humiliation into powerful advocacy. When finally addressing the media 3 days after the incident, she spoke with measured clarity that commanded attention. What happened to me occurs daily to people without cameras present, Without viral videos, without CEO spouses, she stated. My experience is unusual only because there were consequences. Rather than positioning herself as a victim, Latasha reframed the conversation around systemic change. She declined multiple national talk show invitations, choosing instead to hold community forums in Riverwood neighborhoods where residents shared similar experiences of discrimination. We don't need my story amplified, she explained to community members packed into New Hope Community Center. We need your stories heard and addressed. The emotional weight wasn't absent, merely channeled. In private moments with close friends, Latasha acknowledged the psychological impact of being dehumanized in public. For 3 nights, I relived it every time I closed my eyes, she confided to her mentor, Dr. Regina Harris. Not the cold liquid, but the cold look in that young man's eyes. Like my humanity meant nothing. Yet this vulnerability became strength as Latasha incorporated her experience into Equal Ground's advocacy work. She developed the Dignity Project, a training program teaching service industry employees to recognize and interrupt bias in real time. When corporations across Riverwood requested her input on their diversity initiatives, Latasha established clear parameters. I'm not interested in helping you avoid lawsuits. I'm interested in creating environments where everyone is treated with fundamental respect. The previously scheduled meeting with 5 corporate executives, interrupted by Trevor's attack, was eventually held. But now, rather than requesting internship opportunities, Latasha presented comprehensive partnership demands, including hiring targets, promotion pathways, and community investment commitments. All 5 companies signed on. Dignity isn't just about how you're treated, Latasha often remarked in her community workshops. It's also about refusing to let mistreatment define you or limit your vision. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect is to expand your demands for justice rather than contract them. 1 year after the Pepsi incident, the Grand Cafe and Bistro had transformed from a cautionary tale into a case study in corporate reformation. The location where Latasha was humiliated now hosted monthly community dialogues between business leaders and neighborhood residents. Every employee wore badges with the company's new core value: dignity is non-negotiable. Across the hospitality sector, businesses implemented what became known as Brooks Standards, comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols that went beyond legal compliance to emphasize proactive culture building. Industry publications that had never previously addressed racism now featured regular columns on inclusive customer service. The financial impact proved equally significant. Companies adopting robust anti-discrimination frameworks reported 23% higher employee retention and 18% increased customer loyalty, according to the Riverwood Business Journal. Meanwhile, businesses that resisted change faced consumer boycotts and talent exodus. What began as one man's deliberate cruelty catalyzed a movement that restructured corporate accountability nationwide. The power of this transformation stemmed from the unique combination of forces at play: Latasha's public dignity alongside Darius's private influence. When dignity meets strategy, systems change, noted civil rights attorney Benjamin Taylor in his analysis of the case. Ms. Brooks showed us how to maintain humanity in the face of dehumanization. Mr. Hawthorne demonstrated how to translate moral outrage into structural reform. Perhaps most remarkably, Latasha and Darius continued their lives much as before. They declined book deals and documentary features, focusing instead on their original missions. Equal Grounds expanded its advocacy work. Hawthorne Innovations launched a $50 million fund supporting Black entrepreneurs. Their partnership remained their greatest strength, publicly separate but privately unified. For anyone who has experienced discrimination, the story offers a powerful truth. Dignity isn't just about how you weather the moment of disrespect, but about how you transform that moment into momentum for lasting change. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join our community fighting for justice. Together, we're documenting not just what's wrong in society, but how determined individuals are making it right. When power acknowledges responsibility, true accountability becomes possible. The story of Latasha and Darius reminds us that justice sometimes requires both public dignity and private influence, a combination that transforms individual incidents into systemic change. Ask yourself, who holds the untapped power in your community to address injustice? Sometimes, strength resides where least expected, waiting for the right moment to emerge.